Yellowstone National Park for vacation. I'm going to explain to you why Yellowstone should be on your bucket list. I've always been interested in nature and the outdoors, so I did some research on Yellowstone for this speech. Yellowstone is one of the most popular tourist attractions in the United States, and by the end you'll understand the history and the attractions of Yellowstone, and also get to know some of the wildlife and the geographical features at Yellowstone. It was the first national park established in the United States. It was established March 1st, 1872. It covers 3,468 square miles of lakes, rivers, mountains, and canyons. And until the early 1800s, Native Americans lived in Yellowstone. John Coulter was the first to explore and document Yellowstone, but the authors back east, they wouldn't publish any of his findings because they didn't believe him. And the first detailed exploration was in 1869. It was the Cook, Folsom, and Peterson expedition. They spent a month exploring Yellowstone, and they finally got their stuff published because it was more accurate. In 1948, the first visitors could tour with vehicles, and until then they could only tour with skis and snowshoes or hike, and that prevented a lot of people from coming. Starting in the 60s, trails were developed for snow machines and hiking, and as a result, by the 90s, an average of 150 people visit the park each year. In 1959, there was an earthquake that damaged most of the roads and the structures in Yellowstone, but it also formed new features like geysers. In 1988, there was a fire that burned 36% of the park, which was 793,888 acres. It cost the United States $120 million to try to stop the fire, and they were unsuccessful, and the fire kept going until the snow fell, which finally stopped the fire. Now we'll look at some of the wildlife. It has the largest concentration of wildlife in the lower 48 states. It's home to 67 different mammal species. Grizzlies are the most popular, and on average 500 in the park each year. There are 13 different wolf packs in the park, and the gray wolf was restored in 1995. Yellowstone is the only place to have a continuously free-ranging bison population, and it's the largest in the world and the oldest. And in the summertime, the traffic is sometimes stopped for hours because the bison herds cross the roads. And because they want the animals to stay wild in the park, any animal that comes in contact with humans or is fed by humans has to be killed. There are 330 species of birds in the park, and 148 of them nest in the park each year. There are more than a dozen birds of prey that live in Yellowstone. The peregrine falcon, bald eagle, and the osprey are monitored each year to help preserve their population. There are 12 native species of fish, and there's 5 non-native species of fish. The cutthroat trout are the most important to the ecosystem and the most prized by anglers. None of the fish are stocked in Yellowstone. It's all done by natural spawning. And because of that, there's a lot of restrictions on the size and the limits for fishermen, and you have to have a special permit to fish inside the park. And finally, we'll look at the geographical features that make Yellowstone so unique. It's made up of mountains, lakes, rivers, and canyons. There are 3 mountain ranges. The Absaroka Range is in the east, the Teton Range is on the southwest boundary, and the Gallatin Range in the northwest. The tallest mountains are in the Absaroka Range, and they exceed 10,000 feet. There's over 500 geysers, and Old Faithful is the most famous. It erupts every 35 to 120 minutes, and its maximum height is 184 feet. The eruptions last anywhere from 1.5 to 5 minutes, and there's 300 known waterfalls, and over 25 of them are at least 100 foot tall. And today I've shared with you a brief history and a few of the attractions you can expect to see in Yellowstone National Park. You can see anything from the world's most famous geyser to the oldest buffalo herd and a bunch of waterfalls.